Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is January 21, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank the great Stinkfoot Orchestra tribute band to Frank Zappa, who introduced me to today's guest, Anthony. You're going to have to pronounce it LoGerfo.
Close enough. The G is soft. That's why it's capitalized. LoGerfo.
LoGerfo. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, you got it.
Where are you calling
Thank
in
you.
from? Yeah, where are you calling in from?
I'm in Southern California right now, in Ventura County.
How cool is that? The first question, Tony, is what is the best thing for a human being?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, I think, is love. Giving love and being loved. But scientifically, I guess, maybe sunlight.
Oh, wow. Love and sunlight. You can't go wrong with those two. Those are really cool. Love is the answer I get the most, but sunlight, man, I don't get that. That's very true. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
I like to watch. I'm better at watching, something and listening at the same time, opposed to, and probably listening would be the number one, because I'm thinking about music. I started as a listener more than a reader, so I would start, I learned to read later, when I need to become a blue collar musician.
Dude, you're talking standing, you're really grounded in humanness, man. That was a great comment. But why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, I think to grow and to gain perspective and understanding of one, our species, and two, our one's culture, whatever they may, wherever they live and whatever they're exposed to.
But do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Good question. I think it's a hybrid.
Yeah.
I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a little of both. I'm not sure if we would feel the need to gain as much information as we do now if it wasn't kind of pushed on us the way it is, at least for us Western people that, have phones and that are on their phones and their computers and such.
It's like create the disease and offer the cure. You need to know what's happening on the other side of the world. No, you don't. Just take care of your 150 people or close to you in your community. That's probably good enough. But it is in some of these questions at the beginning, Tony, are kind of, is it more this or more that? And of course it's both. And it's like what you said, a great word, hybrid. But it's just, these are just prompts to get us to talk. So you don't have to feel like you have to answer the question. So do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, I think so. I believe we are almost 99% responsible for our own emotions. And so then your brain would be, controlling those emotions, really. And we can blame it on a bunch of things and validate others so they feel better about their emotions. But truthfully, we're the only ones that can control that, I think. My point of view.
Good. You're very articulate and concise, Tony. I appreciate this.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I
feel.
Wow. Can humans think without language?
Yes. Yeah. Can they think without language? You're saying yes. I think. I remember thinking when I was 2 years old is my earliest memory. So I was thinking, without words, you know. Maybe I could talk a little bit, but probably not much.
That's amazing, because that's one of my questions. You anticipate it. You must have ESP. But, Chomsky says language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do
Yeah.
you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Good question. You mean in if you can't understand somebody, it could be positive or negative. How would you respond to that?
It's pretty much that. It's like you put the questions into the context you want. Sometimes I just go, well, it's like you're talking to a friend or a family member and it's not working with words or language, or you're at the store and the clerk, you can't when communication breaks down, what do you do?
Sometimes best to just stop talking,
Yeah.
and just kind of let the energy, show what the communication really is saying. I mean, you can read people with their energy. And then if you're trying to communicate just like on a positive level too, and you really don't have the language, the verbal language to communicate, I feel that, moving and signs can help. And also music, it leads to the music is the universal language that we learn to speak and feel with just playing with each other, even if we can't speak, verbally the same language.
Music's a healing force is really good, but your observations, you kind of answered this, Tony, but your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
Great question. I think again, it's both. We are
Yeah.
both. And
Yeah.
I think, even before we could use words and language and we create all these things, our, ancestors were sitting there thinking still. They may not know what they're thinking about, but something was going on, just like we don't know for sure with, okay, I'm going to break out the human species, but animals, they may be thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, they might not be thinking that they've got to go to the grocery store, but they may be thinking something different, something simple, or something complicated. It's hard to say.
Well, these are two questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
No, I think it's a function of the brain, actually.
Yeah. The second, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
The second Turing question is, can machines think?
No, but I'm not sure. That's with a big but, I mean, we're getting into new territory, but I think that let me say this. I think feeling can provoke thought, can inspire to think more. So the function of the brain is to think. Again, the brain can control the emotions, the chemistry in it, and what we do, but the feeling is what inspires us to do and to think.
Yeah.
And the feelings we get from those thoughts that are either just daydreaming or inspiring us to do something that then creates a feeling. And then it's this like loop. It's kind of universal instead of a linear answer.
Yeah. It's like a Mobius strip or a snake eating its tail. But I love when you said there's a big but. That's what Pee Wee Herman says. Everybody has a big butt.
It's true.
You do. I'm glad we're laughing. That's what this is, to have fun. So, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Great. Another great question. Gosh, I think I would like to think that I pursue happiness more, but I'm learning how meaning is more important.
Wow. Because, I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He says meaning tends to last and happiness doesn't necessarily last.
And maybe that's why I've lived longer now. So as a, you know, a teen and, you know, a very young man in my 20s, I wanted to, you know, be happy. But then I realized that's just like a circumstance. It's not an actual chemical in the body, you know? And so maybe having meaning creates more of a groundedness in just existing, which then I guess could say would lead to happiness.
What year were you born?
1983 in Glendora, California.
In what city?
Glendora, California.
Oh, Glendora. How cool. So here is something you already touched on. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
I think it's there.
Yeah.
I think it's universal, and it's always there, no matter if we're alive or dead. The consciousness is there, and maybe we can't completely understand what it is universally until we start breaking down and seeing it all in, you know, fractals and pixels, and then we're going, okay, now, you know, but to conceptualize it, it's hard. But I do think it's always there, and it's universal, and we contribute to it. So that's one reason why I believe in positive thinking, even though people that are negative don't like to hear that, you know, and that's okay. But I do believe the more we can kind of push that, if we have the freedom to, and, you know, the ability to, then it can add to the universal consciousness. And I think that's why we have so much depression going on, because again, we go back to the information, how much information we take on every day. We both know just in the last 20 years, that's like evolved in a huge way.
Yeah. I love your positiveness, man. I accentuate that myself. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light.
There's a poet, Audre Lorde. She said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Her colleague, Yvonne Rainer, said, oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
To dismantle the house?
Well, that's a good, you're answering a question with a question, Anthony. You win. That's what this is all about. But here's it. It's basically you put it in the context you want. So I open these questions with cute quotes sometimes. It doesn't mean you have to apply them. The basic question I'm asking is, what tool do you most gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and you can say to dismantling the master's house if you want, you know.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you play with the question. It's like me and you versus the wording on the questions. We're sort of psychoanalyzing the wording. So we can have you can go, well, I don't like that verb you said in that question, or I want to change the noun to this. You can do whatever you want. They're just sort of prompts. And another thing, I welcome anecdotes, stories, and tangents. You can go wherever you want. You know, if it goes, oh, that reminds me of this, you know, whatever you want.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, with that one, I mean, the first thing that came into my house was a bomb. I mean, into my mind was a bomb, you know, but I don't know what that says about me, but that's how I would take down the house.
Wait, I missed the word BOMB. Is that what you said?
BOMB. Yeah. Bomb.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I just blow it up.
Yeah.
Forget the tools. How about some gunpowder? You know, we don't need any tools. But that's just me, like literally thinking of the question. How would I deal with that? And
yeah, we don't need no stinking tools.
We don't need no tools.
One of my political heroes, we were walking through a shopping mall once. I says, I with all this shit was burned down. And then, you know, January 6th happened. And I went, well, no, when Trump got in, I says we should storm the castle. And then they stormed the castle and it was like backwards. It's like, what? And then like today they released all these guys. Is this for real? Are we living in so I mean, that's funny because I mean, I mean, what tool do you most gravitate towards?
I mean, as a tool, that I gravitate towards drumsticks.
Yeah, that's great. That is so practical. It's
Yeah.
so what new toy do you suggest?
Uh, I suggest getting in nature and using it as a toy. I mean, it's man's greatest toy. It's,
Wow.
being the forest or the ocean or, whatever
That's
it
good.
may be, whatever is free, whatever the earth gave us for free,
Yeah.
that's the greatest toy. And when I say toy, to use it, that brings joy,
Yeah.
yeah.
Dude, toy rhymes with joy. Beautiful. You are
Yeah.
positive. So what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Whew. I mean, that's a long list but I try not to. And I find if I'm not sleeping well, that I'm worrying or I'm in my head. It's probably more personal things that I think about than worldly, to
Yeah.
be honest, when I go to bed. I mean, I have a lot of like, I guess honest fear about things that could happen in our planet, and then with humanity and all these things. But then I try to kind of like when COVID hit, I go, well, this was something that was going to happen though. There's all these predictions. And if you understand history, it keeps recycling the planet and animals and, so I was always accepting of that. So I think that's why I don't worry too much on a broad thing, even though I'm aware that this,
Yeah.
and so more I'm thinking about my family and taking care of them. And, I think about my parents a lot. I love them dearly. And I, getting in this part of my life, I'm 41 now. I'm a young man still, but it's a change. You start seeing things. I think I've started to see life differently. And again,
Yeah.
that goes back to that thing we were talking about of, meaning or happiness,
Yeah.
and maybe just a few years ago, not long ago, I would have said happiness, but
Yeah.
it changes. So that, I start thinking about things I hadn't thought about before. And those are probably things I think about at night. But then I catch myself and I say that positive thinking. Hey, it's a gift that you're laying in bed right now next to your sweetheart and that your parents are here and you got nothing to worry about, right now. Just take a deep breath, let all that go, and then I'll
Dude,
fall asleep.
that is so good. Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, Tony, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, it's kind of like, why do people eat McDonald's?
That is a great answer. Wow.
So I'm glad you like that. I mean, it's just,
oh, come on. I mean, anyways, that really summed it up so simple. But do artists have moral obligation?
no, I don't like that kind of responsibility on anybody.
Yeah.
And no, the only obligation is to yourself.
Yeah.
Be good to yourself. And if you're good to yourself, chances are you can be good to people, other people. So no, an artist, no, I don't, it's, if they are aware of it and they choose to practice it, great. But those things take exercise, and exercise takes work.
Yeah.
You know? And sometimes it's easier for people than other people. That's totally a truth. But it's still, it all takes work. Even the ones that are the best at it, it took them a long time. And I know what I've been able to do as a musician. There were some things that were natural, but a lot of it was hard work, and a lot of it was those exercises, you know.
We're going to get into music soon. A few more of these. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Another great question. I would say I'm not afraid of I'm thinking of it again, I relate it to music, but I'm not afraid of either.
Yeah.
I like ideas. If
Yeah.
someone has ideas and at least they're saying them, I like that person, because at least they're trying to throw something out there and not just saying nothing.
Yeah. Now, you answered this, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
Yeah. And that is of music. You know, I remember listening to music and the feeling it gave me, which was a sense of security, a sense of belonging, if you could even understand what that is at 2, but some sort of familiarity. You know, I'd heard it before. And I remember hearing Stevie Wonder, "I Just Called to Say I Love You," was in that memory, along with Bebop and Sunshine of My Life by Stevie. Those are the 3 tunes I seem to remember. And I got confirmation that I was like around that age when I would be listening to music with my family and just like kind of moving my body to it. And my grandmother saying, "Wow, he's got perfect rhythm," to my mom.
Wow. So what format is that? Vinyl, CD?
It would have been vinyl. My parents listening to
Vinyl. Wow. How cool is that?
And
That's really
then my
good.
family split, you know, so I kind of remember that. You know, my family split up, you know, they were cool with me, but they just went their separate ways, my parents. And I think, and they went very young. So it's another kind of memory actually I do have earliest. And when that happened, I think music was somewhere a safe place for me.
Yeah.
Again, not even understanding words or how to put this into words. It just naturally was.
Heavy duty, Tony, because when you said music was a sense of security and belonging, that's amazing. But now you're saying it was a safe place. Okay, so is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Woo! I mean, I don't want to say it's more a curse, because I like remembering and I don't want to curse my memory. But I will say, as a thinker and a thinker of the past, that it can sometimes get in the way if you don't know how to turn it off.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things of like, hey, you know, I know that's there, but I need to stop that for a minute and be focused on what's going on right in front of me, you know.
Well done. So tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, good question. I mean, my dad had an immediate impact on me because he was he's the guy that would always go for it. You know, he created his own business as an artist, and so that was a huge impact to grow up watching him, you know, be an artist, and again, a blue collared artist, because he had a sign gig too, where he would make signs, and that's kind of like playing casuals, and but he still did his cartooning and his sculpting and his art and everything. So he had a huge impact in just following that, whatever it is, and then and my mom had a huge impact on learning how to be grounded and educate myself and you know, deal with knowing who I am. You know, she really helped me understand how important that is super young, and to deal with my own stuff. That was one of the biggest lessons I got really young from her. It made a huge impression. She told me when I was like, before I was even a teenager, that most men in the family don't deal with themselves. You know, don't make that mistake. So, you know, I'll never forget that. It was a huge impact. So I've always tried to deal with my own things and not put them on people.
Dude, you're really articulate and concise. It's so fun, Tony. This is great. I know the minute I met you backstage, I says, man, I want this guy on my podcast. So now the same question outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what was that impact?
I'd have to say Alan Waddington at Citrus College. I was 18 getting out of high school. All I knew is I wanted to be in a rock and roll band and surf. That's it. That's all I wanted. And I wasn't planning to go to college, but I got a recommendation to go talk to Alan Waddington, who was at Citrus College in Glendora, California. And he was one of the teachers there. And I sat with him, and first thing he asked me, who's your favorite drummer? And, you know, I said, I think Keith Moon, and then John Bonham. And of course he was like right away, oh, I love those drummers. And he's the first teacher that ever liked the music I was into. And then we talked about a lot that night, and he invited me to go see the big band play, the Jazz Blue Note Swing Orchestra at Citrus. And that band toured to Japan every year, went to Hawaii every year, and they also got the kids to do casuals as in small jazz combos that would help fund these trips. It was a serious program of a group of musicians that started it at a junior college, and they made it for kids like me. I couldn't afford to go to a university, so I could pay, you know, I don't know, it's $10 a credit or something really low, and go and study with these guys. So when I heard the big band play, I was floored, and I realized it was a new beginning. I didn't know anything. All I had was that you know, instinct and that natural ability to play kind of 4/4 drums in rock, you know, and, you know, tribe kind of groove, you know, but I didn't have this understanding of reading, of jazz, of blues, of reggae, of Latin from all around. That's just a very, you know, there's a lot of different styles of Latino music. I mean, just a ton of stuff that I didn't understand. Orchestral, I felt like I had to start over. And I did. I left this band I was in at the time that I had helped grow to be very successful in Southern California from when I was like 13 to 18. And it's kind of a long story, but Alan was such a huge impact, so fundamental in helping my life and helping my musical career, because basically he got me in at Citrus, and I was in all these low bands, and then I spent, you know, 5 years working my way up to the top bands and learning all those styles of music I mentioned, and becoming, like I said, like I like to use the term, blue-collared musician. And I got out of my head of being a rock star, and I decided to be a musician. Funny enough, the rock star thing kind of actually ended up naturally happening. But
That's it. Yeah, I was going to say,
having that as my vision. You know?
No, that's beautiful, because I was like, dude, you're not really blue collar now if you play for Neil Young, and but anyways, you're very humble, and it's beautiful how you told that story, because we're going to slowly get into music. A couple more of these. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Well, they baptized me as Greek Orthodox, but they did not read me anything from the Bible, or we didn't do anything. I mean, we went to church on like you know, for the Greek Greek festival, and then I'd go with my grandmother as a young kid, you know. But again, we were, you know, very loosely religious.
Do you pray?
Yes.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh man. Well, I don't know. You're welcome. You're in.
Yeah.
But that's just. I don't know if it's like that though. I don't know if I really believe that when you
Yeah.
die, God's sitting there going, "Hey, come on in. You did well." But if God was sitting there like that, I think I'd be like, man, I hope he's gonna let me in right now. Or she. I was also gonna say, I hope it'd be a woman. That would just blow everyone's mind. It's this, amazing goddess there and goes, yeah, you're in, or no, you're going down. But I I think it's a consciousness, it's an
Yeah.
energy that can, and I do think that we exist as spirits, to some degree, but I don't think I'm not religious where I think that it's one God that we're, if you don't follow it, you're toast,
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Great question. I think evil people are conditioned and are kind of, they learn their behavior.
Yeah. Well, the real question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yep.
JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
It's so funny. That was where I was going to go first, because that's what I relate to most, hearing all of those.
Yeah.
I think he's correct. If you acknowledge them, you empower them. That could also, though, be tied with keep your enemies close. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer, because if you don't acknowledge that to your enemy, then they shouldn't bother you. You shouldn't be a problem, So that one's an interesting one. If you're not acknowledging a problem, well, there is no problem. There is no enemy. I love that, because too many times we create the problem or the enemy, or hold on to what the enemy did or what the issue is, instead of just not acknowledging that,
You're
Then
smart.
there's an argument of acknowledging is important to acknowledge things, but I think positive things are important to acknowledge. And we as a society focus on so much negative.
You're really smart, Anthony. I actually quote Marcel Duchamp all the time. There's no solution because there's no problem. Now that sounds namby-pamby, like you're ignoring it, but really you're empowering it. But it is also like, what do we do? Because Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. We don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. So does punishment work?
Right. That's a good question. Wow. I never thought of that. I don't know if it works. I don't think it necessarily does. You stumped me on that one. I'm not sure. What do you think?
I'm not out to stump anybody, but that was fun. You said, because you could say, I don't know. See, saying I don't know or I can't answer that is totally valid. People think because I ask a question, you got to answer it. No, Rebecca Solnit said something great. She says, just because you ask me a question doesn't mean I have to answer it. So these are just, but we'll move on because I'm really chomping at the bit to get into music.
That's a good one, though. I'm going to think about that, because it's a good question. I mean, does it actually solve the problem or just make the person not want to get caught? Because I'm thinking as a kid, the one thing I hated was when I had to go with the hourglass. did it make me better though for the shit I was doing, you know, throwing rocks or whatever the hell I did as a kid, you know, doing stupid kid stuff? Probably not. I probably just went further and threw the rocks. I'm not sure, you know. So
well, it's also in my group today discussion, everybody said, did all the January 6th dudes sit in jail for the last year and learn some new tricks on how to fuck people up, or did it make them go, geez, I should rethink this? And then their master lets them out. It's like, whoa. But
that's a great question. That's a good one.
James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
And I don't know, but that's a question again that I think is one like, why do you now have to be rich to be eco-friendly?
Yeah, that's a great one.
You know, why do you have to, you know, be rich to eat organic? You know, what is that? You know, and you know, so maybe that goes with the same thing about, you know, people going into the movie, you know, it's just created by this bigger, you know, power source that is all about money and making more money and making you pay for things that are free. You don't need money to
Anthony,
go look at a tree.
You'll love this one. I go to Smart and Final and I buy beets. Actually, if I buy organic beets, they're cheaper than beets sprayed with pesticides. And I go up to the clerk and I goes, yeah, it's amazing. You charge me $1 more to spray poison on my beets. And they just look at me like, what the, I don't know what you're talking about. They don't get it. They're just like scanning. And it's like, literally, that is a weird exception, I guess, that it's cheaper to buy beets without poison on them. You know, so that's contrary to what you were saying, but I know what you're saying. You know, in order to eat healthy and follow the rules, you got to spend more money. It's like, well, why not? Don't you want to live longer? But then they got you by the balls. It's like, no, you got to spend more if you want to eat good. You know,
well, they capitalize it. But again, you know, shameless plug. That's why I sponsor, you know, I'm with Farm Aid, because they you know, are all about bringing awareness. And actually, you don't have to be rich to eat organic. You can grow it. But that goes back to that idea of that takes time, takes effort, takes awareness, takes learning. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't want to put any of that time because they're addicted to all these other things that, you know, creates the feelings. So yeah, man, it goes back and forth of, it should be free. Why are we paying more? They've capitalized on it, you know, and even the words, you know, something that is natural, then they use that one to, well, natural. So
no, then you can throw it. Then they make up rules what you can throw the word organic or natural on. So there's shit that's got corn syrup up the yin yang and it's called natural. You know,
it's like, you know, that's what I say to people. If you can't grow it, at least try to go to a farmer's market or even a fruit stand and compare the two. And there you go. A lot of times the farmer's markets aren't crazy, you know, expensive.
So Tony, walk us through, where's that tipping point? You're dancing around, you know, to Stevie Wonder when you're a baby. Then 13, you get in some rock band. So where was that tipping before, from you're a baby to 13, where you go, oh, that's what I want to do. That's my calling, to be a drummer? And was that the first instrument? Did you go, oh, what age did you go, oh, music is my calling? And then what age did you go, oh, the drums are my instrument?
Well, I think when I was 2, the earliest memory is when music was my existence, my destiny, and I could feel it inside. And then drums, actual playing the drums came at 5. And when I could conceptualize more that I wanted to do that in a band. Because I think from 2 to 5, I just didn't, all I knew was singing, dancing, drumming, playing a little bit of guitar and piano. But what really hit me, because we had all these things around the house, my parents were musicians, but not at the level of even gigging. They just played for fun. And they didn't push it on me. And then the funny thing is I started asking them for a drum set. Maybe it's because it's one of the few instruments we had in the house, but I think it's because it was so big. And I remember seeing it and thinking, whoa, that looks so amazing. It's this huge instrument. And the drummer seemed to have the reins. And I like that from being 5. At 5, I was going, I want drums. And then I got my drum kit at 10. And I think between the age of 5 and 10, I could dream of what kind of drummer I wanted to be. And at that time, it was primarily I wanted to be in a rock band, but I did like jazz and soul music and, anything from the 60s and 70s. And, it's my parents' music. So, but I didn't necessarily want to be a jazz drummer. I wanted to be in the Who or Led Zeppelin or, those were the bands I really, kind of admired as a kid.
So a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you clearly not see the intention of the maker. When you're writing a Tony piece of music, you're composing your own piece. It's not a commission and you're not playing someone else's music. When you're writing a composition of your own, what role does intention play in the creative process for you?
I think, I think again, it's kind of a combo for me. I'll set out to do it, but I have to say at the same time, most of the time it just comes from somewhere. I'm inspired. Yeah. And if I don't pick up the pen or the recorder, that inspiration goes away and I can't remember what it was. Anytime I've said, oh, I'll get to it, even within 10 minutes, the actual original melody is gone. Right. That's how precious it is, and I've worked with some other guys that claim this too, they're much more profound songwriters, they have a bunch of hits, but I think that it's just kind of universal that exists and it comes from a place deeper than we know. And I like to write stream of consciousness when I'm writing. So usually it's, if I'm at the piano, it's whatever's coming. If I'm singing the lyrics, it's whatever's coming out. If I'm singing the melody, I rarely change it. I try to perfect it, and it makes it work. It fucks it up usually. And my solo stuff is called Love Commando. That's what I go by when I make my own records. And I have another one that I'm going to hopefully put out this year, later in the year. So
beautiful. Yeah. So then Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your potential listener when you're writing a Love Commando song?
Not at all.
Yeah.
And that's because I've worked now in my 31 years of drumming, actually having a drum set, within the first year I was in a band. So I've been in bands for 30 years and I've played a lot of different band styles and but when I make my own music, it's kind of like it's just for the practice of letting it out. It's not for work, you know. I'm not trying to do anything, but just make it, and then it does what it does.
McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness, like knife and fork extends our teeth, shutter and a camera extends our eyelid. Maybe religion or philosophy, non-tangible things extend consciousness.
Sure.
What do the drumsticks extend for you? What humanness?
My connection to the planet and to the universe. So it's a universal thing, which I guess is not humanness, but I was going to say my heartbeat, which again, I know only beats for me in this life, but again, I'm thinking of it and it's like it's part of the universe too. So the drumming is an extension of me, that's an extension of the universe.
Really good, dude. You again have ESP. You anticipate a question, but before we get to that one, what is the function of music?
Great question. I think it has many functions depending on who you are and what you're using it for. So its earliest function, I think, was to get out that gift from the universe again, that whatever that is, that rhythm, or it could be part of us, which again, if we're part of the universe, it makes sense it come from the universe. So I think that was what it, was used for in its most earliest states, and maybe for communication too, with being able to show emotion coming up and going down and not knowing how to speak, but you can do it on a drum, speed up, slow down, hit harder, hit softer, all these things. Flutes that they had, play flutes and things like that. So that's kind of what I think in the beginning it was for, but then it just evolved into so many things it can be used for, a lot. And again, healing too, I think would be the earliest, because it's a healer. You get together with people, you play music, you had a hard day, all of a sudden you feel better. So I'm sure in the early days, before they could say much, human beings, they just sit around and, make these sounds that connected them to the universal realm, really.
No, it's amazing. Healing, everything you said is important. But if you read Mickey Hart, the drummer of the Dead's book on drums, he says the first function of music is to warn people they're coming to get our food, and so you hit on the log, and it's like you said, communication or warning. And then my other friend said, it's dance. The function of music is to have people move. And then another friend I love is to keep people from going insane.
Well, it's kind of everything we just touched on.
Yeah, it is.
It's all those things, right? It's to keep people going from insane. Come home from work, you play some music.
Yeah.
To warn people. Yeah, to communicate. I love it.
Yeah.
It can be so many things. Again, I studied with a guy, Efren Toro. He's an amazing drummer. And he taught me the difference between linear and universal in music. And I was pretty much straight up linear before I understood, that concept. Yet I had it in me, like we all do. It just needs to be awakened, and sometimes it's pushed down because of the way we grow up,
Well, here's what you anticipated by saying the heartbeat. This is I'm gonna go on a little long, but it entails a lot, and you can go wherever you want. The basic question, Tony, is why is 4/4 time the most commonly used time signature in Western music? Besides being intuitive and easy, it might be because it's in sync of how we walk or march with our heartbeat rhythm. But
Okay.
then Captain Beefheart came along, and he wanted to vary from what he called the mama heartbeat. He said that same old 4/4 rhythm is related to fascism. It's so fixative, so hypnotic, so synthesized to where it's dangerous to the heart, faster than the heart. So disco is dangerous. So you know what I'm saying? He's just doing the variation thoughts. He wanted non-hypnotic music to break up that catatonic state. So the guy we met, Frank Zappa used many. He didn't poo-poo 4/4, but he also used many time signatures.
Sure.
So I'm just curious your thoughts on that. Why is 4/4 the most commonly used time signature in Western music? And any thoughts on what Beefheart's tangent on 4/4?
Well, I think that this, it's a great question. 4/4, I don't think is actually real. So what I learned from Efren and what Efren learned from ethnic music is that there is only 3. 1, 2, 3. That's it. There's no 4. There's a combination of 2 and 3, and everything breaks down into 2 and 3. So to count 4, to count 5, to count 7, we're making it more complicated. And then it relates to walking, like you said. But we don't walk in 4/4. We actually walk in 2/3.
Yeah.
We do everything in 2/3. And if you start watching the trees, the bird, and listening to the birds, everything is in 2s and 3s. So when that concept is understood, you can then go and play with Zappa, and he can move all over the place in the time signature, and it doesn't fucking matter because it's either 2 or 3. It doesn't matter. We make it way more complicated than it is.
He was a smart teacher. But George Clinton P-Funk says everything is on the one.
And he is right. You could break it down that there's only one. But
yeah.
this is the 2 and 3. I'm playing 2/3. And when you speed that up, every rhythm is in that.
Yeah.
It's all it is. It's just a spinning wheel, like the planet, like the universe.
Yeah.
So rhythm connects to the universe. Again, my teacher Efren helped open my eyes to this. I had a lesson with him the first day. He gives me a 5-hour lesson.
Wow. What age are you then?
I was 34, so it wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
And he told me.
But do you think, have you ever heard a dispute that heartbeat is not 4/4? Because someone said, no, it's 3. I had a woman who plays guitar with Stanley Jordan, all these Wooten, Victor Wooten. She says the heartbeat isn't a 4/4, it's 3/4. But have you ever heard that?
What is? Do-do, do-do, do-do. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then it's 2/3. It doesn't go
really?
The heart doesn't go boo, 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 boo. It goes boo, 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 boo. And the faster it goes, it starts doing that same 2/3. And all of a sudden, it sounds like you don't want your heart going that fast. But if 2/3 went that fast, all of a sudden, it sounds like you're this incredible rhythm player doing all this crazy, intricate shit when it's just 2/3.
That's like the great line in, I think it's Joe's Garage. Frank goes, Ed Man's going to call up Vinny and show him where 1 is.
Exactly. It's always there. It's George Clinton is right. That's why I love it.
Dude, I never disappoint. I asked George Clinton all these questions. It was the longest interview I ever did. It was over 3 hours with George Clinton. It was like Godhead, and
I got to just tell you real quick with that 5-hour lesson.
Yeah.
The only thing he taught me was 2/3. And he said, I want you to meditate on that for the next 5 years, and then we'll have another lesson.
Oh my God. And then you had one 5 years later?
And the rest of the lesson was all talking about physics and philosophy and how it relates to rhythm.
How do you spell his last name? Torro?
R-O, yeah. T-O-R-O. He'd be interesting to interview.
I would love to have for you. That's really good. Hook me up. But it is amazing what you said there. But is 2/3 different than 3/4 time? Is it similar or is it different?
Well, technically, if you are coming from my school, I'm not saying that 4 doesn't exist, but it kind of doesn't exist if there's only 2 and 3. So
I want to isolate that line. I'm not saying that 4 doesn't exist, but it kind of does not exist.
pretty much.
That's pretty fucking articulate, Tony. I love that.
I mean, all there is 2 and 3. So when I'm asked that question, I would say, if I'm in a studio session, is 2/3 different than 3/4? Yes.
Yeah.
If it's my session, I'm not going to argue with the conductor. But if it's my session and they go, oh, it's 3/4, I'm going, just fucking count to 3 and ditch the 4.
Do you know Emil Richards? Do you know that guy? Emil?
Oh yeah, and he was dear friends with Efren.
Oh yeah, because Emil, they mocked Frank when he came in and he showed him the score. Have you seen this on YouTube? It's like 2-minute video, and they mock Frank, and he comes in and he's like this little dirty hippie, and he gives him these scores. He goes, "What is this?" And then Frank goes, "Let me show you how it goes." And he showed him, and he goes, "Holy shit, this kid knows what he's doing." Yeah. They were blown away by it. And that's pretty heavy for Frank to play. I mean, I talked to Shelly Manne, one of the greatest jazz drummers of all time. I says, what was it like to play with Frank Zappa? He says, that guy knew what he wanted and he got what he wanted. I mean, that's like an elder of the fucking LA jazz scene saying this kid knew what he did,
Oh, he did. And, I know Terry pretty well.
Yeah.
And Terry and I have played together before. And Terry also studies with Efren.
Oh, really? Wow.
Efren's like the guy. We all look up to Efren because Efren can break down these crazy time signatures that Frank would give, but he just break it down simply into 2s and 3s.
Do you know the other drummer? Is Efren based in LA or San Fran?
Puerto Rico now.
Wow. Because he's no
longer a professional drummer. He considers himself an educator. And he's very not shy of his opinion that he feels he's one of the few that should only educate on rhythm.
Yeah.
There's a difference between rock and roll 4/4 and actually learning how to play rhythm. According to him, and I agree with Efren. I get it now. After that 5 years of meditating, it actually made sense. I went, oh my God, he's right. And now I go into a session and I don't get all hung up on time signatures. And that goes with like playing this most recent Neil Young record I did. It's the first record I ever felt I actually didn't think the whole time. I didn't think about it.
That is heavy. We got to get deep into this now because really quick, I have a friend who studied with this drum teacher in San Francisco. I think his name's Chuck Brown. I'm not sure, but he said he was Tony's teacher. He was Terry Bozzio's teacher in San Fran, and he was Sly Stone's teacher. Do
Oh,
you know this
wow.
guy? It was at Brown. Anyways, it was amazing, who Terry studied with to get where he got. Okay,
Terry's
so
amazing too.
yeah,
What a
yeah,
player.
that's
One of
cool.
my
So
favorites.
here's the 4 elements that Aaron Copland breaks down music. Ingredients: melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. How do you navigate them when you're writing a Tony song? Is there a focus? Is there any, planned? How do you navigate the 4: melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color?
I'm not, again, focusing much on that. It's all just coming from a different place.
Yeah.
Whatever comes first, I go with. I
Yeah.
don't try to sit there and go, well, I got to get this ingredient. It's kind of like
Yeah.
the way my grandmother used to cook. A little pinch of this, a little pinch of that. I don't know how much I used. I'd be asking her, hey, grandma, how much did you put in? I don't know, just a little bit of that.
Right.
It's less of, I'm not analyzing it like that so much.
Okay, so here's the 3 T's of music, my friend says: technique, theory, and taste. Technique, you've learned how to play the drums. Theory, structure. How does one acquire taste?
I don't know. I don't know if they, I think they acquire taste by experience.
Yeah.
So the more experience they have, maybe the better taste, or maybe it ruins their taste. Like so many people who think they
It
know,
ruins it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Morgan Ogren, he played in Zappa's Universe, the drummer. You should
Yeah.
you should meet him. I played him the Shags. Do you know the Shags?
Heard
They're
of them. Yeah.
the worst band in the history of the world. And
Yeah.
Frank was a big fan. And I says, Morgan, you got to hear the Shags. And the drummer's going, kung, kung, she doesn't know that she's kind of playing bad in the big picture. And Morgan goes, does she think she has a groove, or is she purposely playing bad? I said, no, she thinks she has a
That's a
groove.
groove. Yeah.
She does have a groove. It's just not the normal groove.
The one thing you said though about the harmony, harmonic frequency, that also comes from the 2 and 3. So when we're talking about, I'm going back just to one question before this. When we talk about rhythm can create frequency that can then create harmony.
Wow.
So as rhythm players, we are actually harmonic players. And there's several books out there. One is Linear to Harmonic. Another one is Learn to Walk, Learn to Dance, Learn to Drum. These things. So just, you really got me going with those last couple of questions. And then with combining all the different ingredients to make music, yet the drums, percussion are all of those ingredients in one.
Yeah. No, it's amazing what you're teaching me. It's really special, because here's another thing on taste. Because Tony, most people go, where do you get taste? And they go, experience. Yeah. They go, because taste is, like you've used the metaphor of food. It's in the gut, but there is something about how do you gravitate towards this, liking this drummer more than that drummer, and so here's what McLuhan said. I'm curious your reaction. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just your reaction. He said, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference.
I think that's one of them.
Yeah.
And I think it's, language, it's the environment, is it sunny? Is it dark? Is it rain all the time? Those factors in how one may create, and what kind of chords they may play. Minor to create sad, major to make happy, different things. So I think a lot contributes to one's taste, not just experience. Now that we're breaking it down, it would be more of all the elements and how's one also raised, around what sounds, unless they're raised with no sounds and their first time they create is just from what's inside them. But that's pretty hard to do,
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. What's more fundamental, music or language?
Well, that's a hard one, man. I feel like they're they're the same.
They're the same.
They're two different kinds of languages.
They are.
One's, they both can use words, but they're two different kinds of languages. We can communicate with them. We can communicate happiness, sadness. We can't necessarily, ask questions, but we can inspire feelings and show that through music. So what's more fundamental? Maybe I would probably think music, because I think it probably came first.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right, Tony.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's hard to. So tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh. In other words, how can an instrumental make you laugh? Don't you have to have words to make you laugh?
No.
Okay, then tell me an instrumental that makes you laugh.
Oh, what's that song? March of the Elephant or something? What is that?
Right.
You know that song I'm thinking about, right?
Yeah. No, that's a good example.
That kind of makes me laugh or chuckle, at least. Kind of makes me want to skip and smile.
That's good. You know what most people say, the Benny Hill theme song. I go, you can't say that anymore. No, it does make people laugh because it's associated. It's like Spike Jones. That guy was amazing with percussion and vibes and cowbells. But most 80% of his music's with lyrics. So it's funny. But Thelonious Monk, one of my heroes, says silence is the loudest sound in the universe. And Miles talked about the space between notes. How do you know how to integrate not playing? How do you integrate silence in a medium that's all dependent on sound?
Well, I loved learning that, because finally I was like, oh man, this is something that's easier for me to do. Play less.
Yeah.
Playing more was difficult. So the idea of simplicity in space was great. As a drummer, it's kind of hard because you're constant rhythm unless you're in orchestral music. But I would say more of the dynamics of coming down, or the simplicity of playing it straight ahead, can very much be like silence. And it was like a relief for me. I love that.
Yeah.
It's like less is more. Same in the studio. It's like I did so many records where they want to layer everything. And now when I produce a record, I'm all about pulling it back. Less. The silence, like you're saying, only say something if we need it. And again, if we relate it to food and seasoning, if you over season it, it's but some people, again, like McDonald's and like, plastic music, if you want to call it that, or whatever, formulated, bullshit that's just straight. Okay, cool. It's not for me though. I'd rather make my meal,
Homemade. But George Clinton said funk is the absence of. Like when Zigaboo plays drums, you could drive a truck between the hits. Everybody overplays, in my opinion, except Zigaboo and
Zigaboo. That's a perfect example of a drummer doing exactly what Miles, or Monk were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's right there, and universally speaking, in the pocket, right?
Oh,
he's so in that universal pocket.
Yeah. That's why
I guarantee he's not thinking.
Yeah.
I would bet if
Yeah.
what were you thinking about? I don't know. It's nothing, That's the point. That's what makes that so
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, the Zigaboo is like the ultimate for me, and the
He's
James Brown drummers and blah blah blah, because it's like, no, if there was no Zigaboo, there'd be no Wolfpack, no Nate Smith,
no
no
Bonham.
no Fish, no Bonham. Yeah, it's amazing. So then back to Monk, one of my friends taught me this great line. He said, Monk heard all the notes Charlie Parker heard, but only decided to play some of them.
I love that's like having a very wide vocabulary and not saying everything that you could say.
Hey,
I
exactly.
It's
But
it's awesome.
yeah, but Monk said there are no wrong notes.
He's
Agree or
right.
disagree?
I agree. I agree. I'm on that other side. There's only 1, 2, and 3, and there are no wrong notes. And there's only so many notes. And only so many that human beings can actually hear all at once.
Yeah.
So why are we over saturating, everything? We
Yeah.
can't actually even hear it.
Yeah. But I get that. Don't think. I interviewed Don Preston, who played with the early mothers, and he said, don't think. I'm like, yeah, right. How do you not think? You learned all the Rolodex of your head, how to play music, and then you're improvising. How do you abandon thinking? There's still this integration of your mind and your feeling. But it's like people who meditate, they go, don't think about thinking. It's like, well, then you're thinking, or Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. It's like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? So, I mean, how do you talk in those terms? Like, I don't want to think. Anthony, you've been drumming for 30 years. You learned all this shit. How do you abandon that learning? How do you unlearn it?
Well, that's what I'm working on right now, and I'm actually writing chronicles right now in this part of my life, and all about my different experiences, and you know, and that's that thing. As a kid, when we were back to that 2-year-old we were talking about, he wasn't thinking. I
Yeah.
wasn't. So
Yeah.
how do I get back to that
Yeah.
now with all the technique and everything I've learned? Like you said, I learned all these things. How do I have a Rolodex? You're right. I have that. I could go anywhere and reference something and pull it in. How do I do that, but let the computer, my brain, do it without thinking about it? So the computer is just naturally pulling from that. And again, and it goes back to natural or instinct. It's like now I'm that little kid again, right? I'm that 2-year-old, but I can actually play everything that I could feel.
Yeah.
30 years later, I actually learned how to play it and not think about it now. Now I'm at that, and then it comes again from emotion and feeling and inside. And that's, I think, the music we love the most. When we say about not thinking, I mean, at least it's the music I love the most. I mean, there is a difference between music that has a lot of thought and processed, opposed to music that they're just truly in that source.
Yeah.
And yes, thoughts can come in the source just like they can come in meditation. And when they come, you can acknowledge them, or you don't have to, but you can acknowledge them to the sense of, say, there's the thought, back to this. And just, not be upset. Oh my God, I'm thinking it fucked the whole thing up. No, okay. But if you're that in it, the thoughts just naturally go away. It's hard to explain, but it happens.
You could use good words there. Instinct, intuition. Is it muscle memory? I mean, muscle memory. Is that what you're talking about a little?
Well, it's partly muscle memory.
Yeah.
But that's the difference between a rudiment, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, left. There's a paradiddle for you. I could practice that forever. And then it could come up in a song and I could go, here, I'm going to do a paradiddle. da, ba boom boom ba, ba ba boom da ba doo boom ba ba boom boom ba, or I'm doing paradiddles in between.
Yeah.
Or universal, I just ga ba doo boom ga blah ga doo ba ba doo ga ba doo doo ga blah 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 ga ba doo doo ga blah blah blah. I'm not thinking. That's just what's coming out. I don't know. And it's a combination of all those things I practice, or is it the universal thing when I start trying to feel this was the beat, right? But now I'm trying to feel this on a 4/4 beat. Do do ga do 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 ga do 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 ga boom boom ba boom boom ba boom boom ba boom boom, or boom do do ga boom ba tika tika taka boom ba tika tika boom ba tika tika. It's still in that, right? So then all of a sudden the canvas is completely wide open for you. And once that breaks, it's unbelievable. But you can't teach that to. That's why Efren told me, you need 5 years, dude. Just go sit with that.
Sit down for 5 years and come back then. That's a great teacher, man. That is amazing.
And he was right, because all these questions I had went away. I didn't have anything anymore. I says, I get it. You know, I can't execute it the way he does because of his practice of really understanding it in the length of time. And a guy like Monk, he had the understanding of that for a very long time. You know, this is more natural for him.
Yeah,
it takes practice. It's like meditation, right? That was a great analogy, because that's why they call it a practice.
Yeah. Keyword practice. And you know, you said it, you learned from your mom, or you learned early on, hard work and practice is what you need to do. You need the dedication. But I've got to tell you a side story. One time I went to a Zappa rehearsal and Ainsley Dunbar came by. It was probably when Chad was the drummer, and he just sat him down and says, "Oh, we're going to play Black Page." So Ainsley's not the kind of drummer who would play Black Page. That was pre Black Page. But to watch Ainsley, he kind of didn't struggle, but he wasn't playing it right. But it was just like such a ironic flip that Frank would have Ainsley play the Black Page. That was like how Frank would push things. He would get out of you what you didn't even know was in you. You know, he knew how to pull out of people something they didn't have. So here's a
great gift.
Yeah, it was amazing. He talked to the LA Free Press in the summer of 1969. And they said, you mentioned Pauline Oliveira's work with sound above the audible and below, creating a mass, and you liked that idea. And Frank said, not that it created a mass, it created something audible. It produced a some indifference tone, which happened to be located within the audible frequency range. By combining something so high you couldn't hear it and something so low you couldn't hear it, it yields something in the middle you could hear. Whether or not you liked what you hear in the middle is another question. The concept is brilliant. Any thoughts on what Frank was articulating there?
I think frequency, again, creating harmonic, creating harmony. So if you put two frequencies together, they will create a tone. It's the same with, if I'm playing 2/3 and I speed it up, once I get to a certain speed, it will create a harmonic frequency that you will hear, whether you like that frequency or not. I just did a double drum record. It's going to come out this year. And we did things, and people listen to what we're doing, and they go, oh, what's that other sound? Did you play synth, or did you play, what? Is that a marimba, or what's that harmony? Just the drums. It created that because of those tones. So what he's talking about, that low and high frequency that we can't hear, then creates a frequency when played at the same time that we can hear.
Really good. That's really good. People struggle with that sometimes when one professional musician said, "No, Frank was wrong." And I goes, "Okay." But you really just, so you have a double drum album, you mean with no other instruments, just two drummers?
No, it's actually a double drum album with me and Jack Irons is the other drummer. He was
The
in the
Peppers
band.
drummer?
Huh?
The Peppers drummer?
Yeah.
So it's you two on drums, and then how many other instruments?
And then Micah Nelson is playing guitar, bass, and synth. And he added those parts after that story I told you about when we first just had double drums.
Yeah.
But when he added his parts, you still hear those harmonics from the drums now. So it's all mixing together. It's really cool. And it's a project that's going to come out later this year that we have. And we're very excited. I've been working on this record for about 5 years with Jack. And Mike
What's
is
it called? What is the band name, or it's just
the band's name is Barking Dog.
Barking Dog? Yeah. Do you know Jack's son?
Zach,
Zach?
yeah. Yeah.
Is he the new Frashani, as they're claiming?
Oh, I don't think he's in the band. You mean in the Peppers?
No. I don't mean he new. I mean, is he come out of Johnny Frusciante's sound? Is Zach?
I don't know. I think that'd be a question for him. You know,
because he studied with him a little. Anyways, because I weaned Frusciante in my living room when he was 16, pre Peppers.
wow.
I turned him on to P-Funk and all this stuff, and it's sort of amazing. So, anyways,
That's cool.
I look forward to this. Barking Dog, singular, barking.
Yeah, Barking Dog, singular, and the record is called Elements.
Elements, really cool. Well,
and that'll probably be out in the next few months.
Cool.
It's coming out on Loose Groove Records, which is Stone Gossard's label from Pearl Jam. And they put out a bunch of records. Great label. Cool. Yeah, we're going to put it out on vinyl and press a limited amount. So we'll be announcing it shortly.
Tony, this is so cool. You know, we got about 10 more minutes, and I definitely want to plan a part 2 because we just broke the surface. I really want to get deeper. Yeah, but that's down the line. Let's close out with a couple more music questions. Really been enlightening. You're really cool, and I appreciate how concise and articulate you are. But I know, I haven't seen you play yet live, and I look forward to that. And here's a comment by Ruth Draper. The key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. How do you do that? That sounds good, but how do you do that?
Yeah. So they give you more, he's saying, the audience.
Yeah, it's a she's sort of the woman who created the one woman show. She's a performance artist, kind of monolith, but it's sort of this.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, but how do you do that? I mean, you're on stage, you're playing to, no matter if you're doing like casuals, like you said, small club gigs, or you're doing huge, huge concerts you play. How do you bring the audience up on the stage? How do you do that?
You don't. I don't think you do. I don't. I think that's what makes them come to the show, is because they're not on stage necessarily. I mean, they want to be, you know, but they're not. And I think that's what creates rock and roll and mystique and why people go. As far as on those big levels, when we go back to jazz or like small clubs, and maybe it's more of like, well, that's like actually like trying to understand the music in a different way. But when we're talking on a big scale, it's like, well, everybody's there because they want to be there in it, How do you bring them up there? I think, to answer that question, you give the most authentic show, pure from your heart, that you can. And if you do that and lay it all on the line that night, and if it's life or death to you, then to me, I did my job. And if the audience member didn't get it, as Miles Davis said, when somebody said, I know the guy who managed Miles, and they came up to him and said, Miles, why don't you play, you know, Kind of Blue anymore? You know, you only play Bitches Brew. And Miles says, well, what am I supposed to wait for you to catch up, motherfucker? Same
Well,
goes to the,
Miles the king at changing his style he changed 5 times and pissed people. But I mean, you
but
play
that's
with
what I say to the audience. You know, I mean,
yeah,
I'm giving it my all. I mean, you're not moving. That's your problem,
yeah.
not mine. You know, I think that's where, as an artist, you have to, if you know and you trust everything, then if the audience isn't getting it, then I don't know. I'm not there to make them get it. Does that make sense?
Well, that makes a lot of sense, but I've just put it in the context of one of your bosses, Neil Young. I mean, he's done what Miles done. He's changed his music style, several times. I mean,
Yeah.
now maybe you're playing his retro shows. Does he play like Dylan? He plays the same old songs sometimes, but it's totally different. But in you observing how
Mm-hmm.
he does it, how does he engage the audience? What do you think his secret is? Or
That's
not
what I was.
necessarily a secret, or it's not necessarily a secret. What is your observation of how he engages the audience?
I think it's what I mentioned
Yeah,
before, is that he's authentic.
yeah,
He's playing from a real place.
yeah.
He is as real as it gets. You like him or not, but
Yeah.
he knows his, I like this term, he knows his true north, Neil.
Wait, say that again. He knows what?
His true north. He always
He
goes,
knows his true north. Okay.
and even if even if he's going and he veers off, he still knows how to get on back to true north always.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why he engages the audience. And I think that he has great music. I mean, he's written so many hit songs that people can relate to, and that can be interpreted in different ways. It doesn't have to be what he actually was writing about.
Yeah.
It can be applied to somebody's life. And then sonically, what he achieves with his tone, that no one if you like guitar playing, there's no one that sounds like Neil. I mean, has his own sound. That's again, like it or not, but a lot of
Yeah.
people like it. And they try to get it and they can't, because it's his own pure, unique thing that he gathered from people and made his thing. So, as we all do. So I think and he wants to put on he wants to play well every night. So I think when people want to say, well, he just does whatever the fuck he wants. Well, yes, but also he does care about it being quality.
Yeah.
That's why he records tape. He puts out vinyl still. I mean, he brings real lighting in. It's all quality.
Yeah. It's
You
really
can't
great.
fault somebody for that. It's just he rather be great. And that's one of the terms that his David Briggs, which was his producer for a long time, and that word or that term keeps living in the camp, even though David Briggs passed away now almost 30 years ago, which was be great or be gone. And we say
Wow.
that to ourselves in the studio all the time, or to people working on Neil's stuff. I mean, that's kind of our mantra that we have: be great
Yeah.
or be just get it, or there's the door.
Yeah.
Tap into that source or not.
Yeah. Tony, let's end off with this. That was really good again. Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is if you put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know. What role does risk play in your creative process?
It's a big role, in the sense that it's all a risk. First of all, if you put out music that's recorded, it's a big risk that it's going to get critiqued and could flop mainstream. Now, if you can let go of that and let go of the vulnerable aspect of, you know, putting it all out there and recording it so it lives forever. There's no taking it back once it's out. That's a huge risk, and something to, like I said, try to get over the fear in that, and then and trust in what you're doing. You know, be great or be gone. That comes back. Were you in that moment? Then there's nothing to worry about. Same goes for a show. You know, there's a risk. They may not like you, but the show is another level of risk because now you're in the public eye. There's risk of somebody doing something at the show, getting hurt at the show, you getting hurt at the show. And I also think the risk of touring is dangerous, to always be on a bus, to always be flying, to be exposed to things. There's a lot of risks in being a musician and a touring musician. Then let's not forget getting addicted to all the things that present themselves to musicians on the road. There's a lot of risk. But if you go back to the source, there shouldn't be any, right? Are we going to acknowledge it? You know, the enemy.
Back to that. But you know, did you get this sensibility? You're a pretty grounded human being, I feel, especially with your positive attitude and your articulateness. Did you get that from the way your parents raised you more or on your own?
Both.
Yeah.
You know, both. I think I got it though from my parents because they worked very hard, you know, to have a good life, you know, and they had a lot of ups and downs and, you know, broken dreams, but that exists for everybody at the highest and lowest levels, you know. And so I just appreciate every time I get to go on stage and play, or I get to record in the studio, and then I'm still doing it. Again, I know I'm a young man, but I never had a job other than playing music. And my parents didn't give me money, you know, other than my dad bought me the kit, but they weren't like, I'm not like a trust fund baby, you know, they were hardworking kids, you know. Well, you're working adults, and I was, you know, a kid that just went out there, and I started making money at like, you know, 13, 14, selling tapes, actual tapes, and playing the Hollywood scene. Not a lot of money, but that's how it started. And I never looked back.
You mean audio cassettes? That was your first medium?
Yeah.
That is cool, dude. My bad. We sold an audio cassette with 12 minutes of music for $1.
Yeah, and I can't remember.
We played the Venice Street Festival in Abercrombie, and we were like, my band was called Black Shoe Polish because we were like white dudes who know that black people play funk better than white people. Sorry, it's reverse racism, but we love, and so we play our set, and I goes, if you want to buy our cassette, it's $1. Come around back. Yeah. And this black woman was in front of the stage waving her dollar saying, here's my $1. And I goes, well, come around back. She goes, we've been coming around back too long.
Oh,
here. And I says, here. I said immediately, here, I'll give you the cassette right now.
Good.
Audio.
You know, I think my first cassette we sold for $5.
Yeah.
And you know, I think we made the record for $1,000 on reel to reel, you know.
Yeah.
1/4 inch tape. We were doing only the 1/4 inch with this. I remember it. Yeah. And I still have it. I got to find that tape. I still have the original. And so that was the start, you know, and I just never looked back. And now I've done like every kind of style and done everything between drumming and playing in bands to, you know, recording, producing, tour managing, merchandising, you know, the whole thing. I learned it all. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for it, you know, and for all the people that welcomed me, you know, which was really cool. You know, that was just such a special thing. Yeah. So,
well, we'll close out now, Anthony. Who out of Stinkfoot got you to their concert? I mean, how'd you get to Stinkfoot Orchestra's show?
It's actually my friend Dennis, who you met that day, brought me to the show.
Oh, Dennis, the guy who works with Meat Puppets?
Yep, Meat Puppets manager.
Oh, he told you. He said you should come and see this Zappa show. He just said that.
Yeah, and he's also producing. He's managing another band, the Stevenson Ranch Davidians, and I'm going to be producing their record coming up next month. So that's kind of how we're connected. He invited me to come down there because I've been producing more, and he thought they might be a band that we were interested in maybe bringing in the studio.
Oh, I see. What's Dennis's last name again?
Pulowski.
He's a good old Polak like me.
And so he brought me, and I was so happy, and I've stayed in touch with the band, and I think they're great. And actually, I do not necessarily think they need production, but I have a studio that I think they'd really be keen to record. It's all tape and analog, and
Cool.
I've been talking with them about that. And so yeah, now that I'm my older band that I was with for a long time is on a hiatus, I'm spending time now producing bands and then working with Neil when we go on tour and make a record. We just made a record with Lou Adler, produced that record.
Oh, how cool.
And that video, Big Change, just came out a couple days ago. I don't know if you've seen it, but I highly recommend checking it out.
You mean YouTube, just go Big Change?
Neil Young, Big Change.
Very cool.
That's the most recent release that I have playing drums with Neil and his new band. Speaking of always starting something new, the Chrome Hearts, which he started with me and Spooner Oldham and Micah Nelson and Corey McCormick of Promise of the Real.
Spooner is in that band playing keys?
Yeah.
Dude, that scene where he's playing with Aretha in what's the name of that movie? Muscle Shoals.
Oh yeah.
Dude, that is so chilling. That is.
I hang out with him all the time. Just love his story. He's a beautiful soul. Great guy. He's really our guy in the band. I mean, he's the oldest, and we just all look up to him and just love his. And then Lou Adler was really our guiding force in making the record.
Oh God, Lou Adler's Godhead, because he made. I
love Lou.
He made one of my favorite films of all time, Up in Smoke.
Oh yeah, mine too.
Guy goes, the cop goes, "Could I see your license?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's on the bumper."
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's just simple. Tony, it's really been fun, man. I appreciate it. And we'll set it can be 4, 5, 6 months down the line. We'll do part 2. Really
Let's do
fun.
it, Jerry.
Dude, I really love you, and I love this time. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Let's do it. And we'll hope to get you out of show one day soon.
I'd love it.
You see a date on there, you let me know.
Thank you, Tony. I love you. Thank you so much.
Peace and love.